الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. All right, so we're going to get started, and the first thing I'm going to start off with is a video that I want you to see. I just found this interesting. It doesn't have too much to do with the topic for tonight, but I want you to see because it's interesting because it deals with something that we talked about before. All right, when we talk about life after this. Okay, I want you to see this. This is a little girl in the cemetery.
Wait, Lola.
See that? Yes, yes. So, very interesting, all right? But a lot of times people deny that there's a life after this world, or they deny resurrection. When Allah tells you, look at nature, look at the vegetation, what happens when it goes through the seasons. It looks dead and barren, right? But then it comes right back, all right? So Allah has given you that as an example of the resurrection, okay? And He says, just as I bring this vegetation back to life, I'll bring you back to life. All right? So here we go. The next thing I want you to see is, and before, because we can't, like I said, we can't go to the slide. So, a millennial. What is a millennial? Because we talked about millennials, but what is a millennial?
What is 100 years?
All right. I'm sorry, in terms of when we deal with the generation now.
Oh,
Young folks.
All right, young folks.
that's the X, Y, Z, and
Right. So they define millennial as of or relating to a millennium or the millennium, worthy or suggestive of the millennium. The generation born in the 1980s or 90s, especially in the U.S. All right, so we're looking at this group of kids that have started to grow up under this technology and stuff like this, right? But now, I want you to see this. This is called this is the millennials in the workplace. This is a guy who gave a talk about the millennials in the workplace. All right, but check this out. I just want you to see some of this. This is very, very interesting.
What's the millennial question? Apparently, millennials as a generation, which is a group of people who were born approximately 1984 and after, are tough to manage. And they're accused of being entitled and narcissistic, self-interested, unfocused, lazy. But entitled is the big one. And because they confound leadership so much, what's happening is leaders are asking the millennials, what do you want? And millennials are saying, we want to work in a place with purpose, love that. We want to make an impact, whatever that means. We want free food and beanbags. And so somebody articulates some sort of purpose, there's lots of free food and there's beanbags, and yet for some reason, they're still not happy. And that's because they're missing. There's a missing piece. What I've learned is that I can break it down into 4 pieces. Right? There are four things, 4 characteristics. One is parenting. The other one is technology. The third is impatience, and the fourth is environment. The generation that we call the millennials, too many of them grew up subject to, not my words, failed parenting strategies, you know, where, for example, they would...
Or the absence of parenting. The absence of parenting. Right.
More of the absence.
Right. That plays all into a part of our conversation we had many times about Aaron Russo and him talking about the women's lib movement was meant to bring the woman out of the home so they could destroy the family because there was no one there to teach the children. Okay? But now watch. Listen to them. This gets interesting.
Special, all the time. They were told that they could have anything they want in life, just because they wanted it. Right? They were told, some of them got into honors classes, not because they deserved it, but because their parents complained. And some of them got A's, not because they earned them, but because the teachers didn't want to deal with the parents. Some kids got participation medals. They got a medal for coming in last, right? Which the science we know is pretty clear, which is it devalues the medal and the reward for those who actually work hard, and it actually makes the person who comes in last feel embarrassed because they know they didn't deserve it, so it actually makes them feel worse, right? So you take this group of people, and they graduate school, and they get a job, and they're thrust into the real world, and in an instant, they find out they're not special, their moms can't get them a promotion, that you get nothing for coming in last, and by the way, you can't just have it because you want it, right? And in an instant, your entire self-image is shattered. And so you have an entire generation that's growing up with lower self-esteem than previous generations. The other problem, to compound it, is we're growing up in a Facebook, Instagram world. In other words, we're good at putting filters on things. We're good at showing people that life is amazing even though I'm depressed, right? And so everybody sounds tough, and everybody sounds like they got it all figured out. And the reality is there's very little toughness, and most people don't have it figured out. And so when the more senior people say, well, what should we do? They sound like, this is what you gotta do. And they have no clue. So you have an entire generation growing up with lower self-esteem than previous generations, right? Through no fault of their own. Through no fault of their own, right? They were dealt a bad hand, right? Now let's add in technology. We know that engagement with social media and our cell phones releases a chemical called dopamine. That's why when you get a text, it feels good. Right? So, you know, we've all had it where you're feeling a little bit down or feeling a bit lonely, and so you send out 10 texts to 10 friends, you know, hi, 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 because it feels good when you get a response, right? Right? It's why we count the likes, it's why we go back 10 times to see if my Instagram is growing slower, did I do something wrong, do they not like me anymore, right? The trauma for young kids to be unfriended, right? Because we know when you get a hit of dopamine, which feels good. It's why we like it, it's why we keep going back to it. Dopamine is the exact same chemical that makes us feel good when we smoke, when we drink, and when we gamble.
And this is why they call it digital heroin. Because people have become addicted to it. Right? Just think about when you hear that thing, you're ready to see who it is. Who's calling? Who's texting? All right?
It's highly, highly addictive, right? We have age restrictions on smoking, gambling, and alcohol, and we have no age restrictions on social media and cell phones, which is the equivalent of opening up the liquor cabinet and saying to our teenagers, hey, by the way, this adolescence thing, if it gets you down. But that's basically what's happening. That's basically what's happening, right? That's basically what happened. You have an entire generation that has access to an addictive, numbing chemical called dopamine through social media and cell phones as they're going through the high stress of adolescence. Why is this important? Almost every alcoholic discovered alcohol when they were teenagers. When we're very, very young, the only approval we need is the approval of our parents. And as we go through adolescence, we make this transition where we now need the approval of our peers. Very frustrating for our parents, very important for us. It allows us to acculturate outside of our immediate families into a broader tribe. Right? It's a highly, highly stressful and anxious period of our lives, and we're supposed to learn to rely on our friends. Some people, quite by accident, discover alcohol and numbing effects of dopamine to help them cope with the stresses and anxieties of adolescence. Unfortunately, that becomes...
Now, what does a Muslim use to cope with their stress? Or what should they use to cope with their stress? Prayer. Your relationship and your communication with Allah. Alright? Right, but see now most of our kids are not growing up with that relationship. Okay? So when you need to seek happiness with outside of yourself, you're done. You know, you have to have that relationship with Allah. That's the first thing that you need in order to make it through this life. Okay? Check this out.
Brains, and for the rest of their lives, when they suffer significant stress, they will not turn to a person, they will turn to the bottle. Social stress, financial stress, career stress, that's pretty much the primary reasons why an alcoholic drinks, right? What's happening is because we're allowing unfettered access to these dopamine-producing devices and media, basically it's becoming hardwired, and what we're seeing is as they grow older, too many kids don't know how to form deep, meaningful relationships. Their words, not mine. They will admit that many of their friendships are superficial. They will admit that their friends, that they don't count on their friends, they don't rely on their friends, they have fun with their friends, but they also know that their friends will cancel on them as something better comes along. Deep, meaningful relationships are not there because they never practice the skill set, and worse, they don't have the coping mechanisms to deal with stress. So when significant stress starts to show up in their lives, they're not turning to a person, they're turning to a device, they're turning to social media, they're turning to these things which offer temporary relief. We know, the science is clear, we know that people who spend more time on Facebook suffer higher rates of depression than people who spend less time on Facebook. Right? These things balanced. Alcohol is not bad, too much alcohol is bad. Gambling is fun, too much gambling is dangerous. Right? There's nothing wrong with social media and cell phones. It's the imbalance. Right? If you're sitting at dinner with your friends and you're texting somebody who's not there, that's a problem. That's an addiction. If you're sitting in a meeting with people you're supposed to be listening to and speaking, and you put your phone on the table, face up or face down, I don't care, that sends a subconscious message to the room that you're just not that important to me right now. Right? That's what happens. And the fact that you cannot put it away is because you are addicted. Right? If you wake up and you check your phone before you say good morning to your girlfriend, boyfriend, or spouse, you have an addiction. And like all addiction, in time it'll destroy relationships, it'll cost time, and it'll cost money, and it'll make your life worse. Right? So you have a generation growing up with lower self-esteem that doesn't have the coping mechanisms to deal with stress. Right? Now you add in the sense of impatience. Right?
Impatience. This is very important. Alright? Because Allah tells us in the Quran, chapter 2, verse 153, O ye who believe, seek help with patience and patient perseverance and prayer. For Allah is with those who patiently persevere. So Allah stresses the importance of patience. Okay? Patience. Go ahead, Sister.
I want to say something. By me growing up, my mother gave us the nurturing spirit. My mother stayed in our world. She gave us the basic common sense things in life. Food, shelter. My mother got killed. So by her going through that, I had went away a long time ago. I had went to work. My mother took care of my 3 children while I was gone. And I went to upstate New York working from January to September, because I stayed at the Jewish camp. I worked in the Jewish camp, so a lot of things that my mother was going through, I sent home. I sent clothes and stuff home to my children. And in boxes, I used to go shopping out there, upstate New York, Camp Messiah Beth. That was the Jewish camp I went to. And I got things for my children, and I worked, cleaned the bunks, because the Jewish children was coming in, and they had the camp for them. So I used to clean the bunks and stuff for them, and make sure that I used to sit down and eat dinner with them when they had their prayer and everything with the Jews. So I sent all my stuff home to my mother, clothes and stuff for my children, so she wouldn't have to buy none of that. But when I got home, I had to stay there with her because she was going through a lot of stress. So I had to stay there with my mother because the men that she knew was disrespecting my mother. So I had to be right there with her because they wanted to call her names and different things. I had to stay there and deal with that because my children were with her, and because I had to fight the men. And the men that were there, I had to keep them off my mother because a lot of things that she was going through stress that my father left her a long time ago. So I had to be the one, the overseer. My sister wasn't around to do anything, so I was there all the time to make sure my mother was all right, to make sure the men wouldn't stick respect for her, say anything they want to say to her. I had to tell them, and then we got to fighting. It was a state of mind that I had to fight to keep the men off my mother. My mother got killed. about certain things happening, but I didn't give myself over to my mother, and I gave myself to God.
Right.
I asked God to give me an inner strength to deal with that challenge and welcome that challenge, and He brought me through victorious, and I had to deal with my children, and I stayed in my children's world. They had the nurturing spirit.
Right.
My children walked. I had to make sure that it was to school. I had to make sure my son went away and come home. I had to make sure I was there to give them the most support that they need, which allowed God blessed me to do that until we growed up together. We stayed together, we prayed together, and we worked together now. Now my son is 59, and my daughter is 58, my son is 59. And now we all at the same state of mind, that communication and the right attitude, so we growing together. We used to be alive because they was in the Nation of Islam, and they growed and got that discipline there.
Right.
But now they comfortable in their challenge because we at the same level of understanding now, right now, about the Quran, by me being the Muslim girls in training, and I'm at a different level now. So praise God. I'm grateful that they know that the time we're living in, they know the Quran is Sunnah of Muhammad, they know that Allah is greater than anything can imagine.
That's
and
right.
we go forth.
That's right. Allah will carry us through
Yes, sir.
everything.
Yes, sir.
Everything.
Yes, sir.
So we just have to stay patient
That's right.
and perseverance.
Prayer.
You know,
Yes,
and prayer, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Praise
most
God.
definitely.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Through gratification. You want to buy something, you go on Amazon, it arrives the next day. You want to watch a movie, log on and watch a movie.
But think about what he just said.
That's right.
You buy something
It's here the
and it's there the next day.
Literally.
Think about how we had used to wait for the mail.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
right.
Weeks
That's
sometimes.
right.
Right. Yeah.
When
But,
you order packages.
right.
Yes.
But now everything they're getting is like that.
Yes, they do. Right.
Instantaneous. Okay?
You want to watch a TV show? Binge. You don't even have to wait week to week to week. Right? I know people who skip seasons just so they can binge at the end of the season. Right? Instant gratification. You want to go on a date? You don't even have to learn how to be like, hey. You don't even have to learn and practice that skill. You don't have to be the uncomfortable one who says yes when you mean no, and says no when you mean no, and yes when you don't have to swipe right. Bang, I'm a stud. Right? You don't have to learn the social coping mechanisms. Right? Everything you want, you can have instantaneously. Everything you want, instant gratification. Except job satisfaction and strength of relationships, there ain't no app for that. They are slow, meandering, uncomfortable, messy processes. And so I keep meeting these wonderful, fantastic, idealistic, hardworking, smart kids. They've just graduated school. They're in their entry-level job. I sit down with them and I go, how's it going? They go, I think I'm going to quit. I'm like, why? They're like, I'm not making an impact. I'm like, you've been here 8 months. You know? It's as if they're standing at the foot of a mountain and they have this abstract concept called impact that they want to have in the world, which is the summit. What they don't see is the mountain. I don't care if you go up the mountain quickly or slowly, but there's still a mountain. And so what this young generation needs to learn is patience. That some things that really, really matter, like love, or job fulfillment, joy, love of life, self-confidence, a skill set, any of these things, all of these things take time. Sometimes you can expedite pieces of it, but the overall journey is arduous and long and difficult. And if you don't ask for help and learn that skill set, you will fall off the mountain, or you will, the worst case scenario, and we're already seeing it, the worst case scenario is we're seeing an increase in suicide rates. We're seeing an increase in this generation. We're seeing an increase in accidental deaths due to drug overdoses. We're seeing more and more kids drop out of school or take leaves of absence due to depression. Unheard of. These are all, this is really bad. The best case scenario, those are all bad cases, right? The best case scenario is you'll have an entire population growing up and going through life and just never really finding joy. They'll never really find deep fulfillment.
So now think about it. Allah has given us this prescription so long ago. It's sitting right here in this Quran telling us about patience, being patient, how important it is to be patient. All right, here's Surah 40, verse 55. Patiently, then persevere, for the promise of Allah is true, and ask forgiveness for thy fault, and celebrate the praises of thy Lord in the evening and in the morning. O ye who believe, this is Surah 3, verse 200. O ye who believe, persevere in patience and constancy. Vie in such perseverance, strengthen each other, and fear love, that ye may prosper. And this is a part of what we do here. We strengthen each other. We come together in, worship of Allah, and we try to strengthen one another. All right? Surah 103, verses 2 to 3. Verily man is in laws, except such as have faith and do righteous deeds, and join together in mutual teaching of truth, and of patience and constancy. Nay, this is chapter 2, verses 45 to 46. Nay, seek Allah's help with patience, perseverance in prayer. It is indeed hard, except to those who bring the Holy Spirit, who bear in mind the certainty that they are to meet their Lord, and that they are to return to Him. It is not righteousness that you turn your faces towards east or west, but it is righteousness to believe in Allah in the last day, and the angels and the book and the messengers, to spend out of your substance out of love for Him, for your kin, for orphans and for the needy, for the wayfarer, for those who ask, and for the ransom of slaves, to be steadfast in prayer and practice regular charity, to fulfill the contracts which ye have made, and to be firm and patient in pain or suffering and adversity, and throughout all periods of panic. Such are the people of truth, the God-fearing, or the Allah-fearing.
That was one of the
Yeah,
surahs
that's
I
right.
got
That's right.
today during the
I read
fast.
that.
Yes.
I read that one.
Chapter 2, verses 155 to 157, it says, Be sure we shall test you with something of fear and hunger,
That's right.
some lost in goods or lives or the fruits of your toil. So think about when we lose a loved one. This is a challenge. This is from God, right?
Mm-hmm.
But give glad tidings to those who patiently persevere, who say when afflicted with calamity, to Allah we belong, and to Him is our return.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't fear any of this stuff that's going on.
That's right.
We put our trust and faith in Allah, and we know that we are to return to Him. There are those on whom descend blessings from Allah and mercy, and they are the ones that receive guidance. So verily, this is Surah 94, 5 and 6, verses 5 and 6. So verily, with every difficulty, there is relief. Verily, with every difficulty, there is relief. So Allah is reminding us that when we go through something, that relief is coming.
Twice.
Okay? Right, twice.
Twice.
So we emphasize it.
Right.
Coming when you got that pain of when hardships arise, you have it on you,
Welcome to
and
challenge.
while you going through it, you gotta patience and persevere, because the Lord's
Exactly.
already
Don't fight the challenge.
He says it twice.
All right, so now we're a little warmed up. So now we're going to get to this stuff. Y'all ready? Because here we go. Let me get you to this. Now, let me show you something. And this is going to play a big part in what we do a little later on, because I want you to see this. This is a couple that are in Alaska, and they're going to...
So now we're gonna head into the supermarket here called the Alaska Commercial Company, also known
Shop.
as the AC store.
All right.
Traditional
So let me get to the part where they're in the grocery part of the store. So this kind of
In
like
a very going up there
Alaska's
to
like
the
Walmart.
groceries.
Yeah.
So we're gonna make some quick rounds through this grocery store just to share some prices of products in a very remote Alaskan village, literally top of the world, edge of the earth.
12-pack of soda is $12.95. Woo!
Jeez.
12-pack of soda,
Ain't that
$12.95.
That $10 for chips. Jeez.
Those
Good
tortilla
night.
chips on sale for $10.74.
Sale.
How much is a one roll of toilet paper?
One roll of toilet paper. Let's play some prices right. What you got? What y'all think?
$2.
I'm looking at it. I see
Here we
it.
go. Let's see what she said.
$2.
Here, $2.60.
Jeez.
That's not even
One
the good
roll.
stuff. Now this is fairly reasonably priced, I think. You can get a pack of condoms for $13. And it's a pleasure pack.
Your choice. You can get Lucky Charms on sale for
Lucky Charms. What you say? What you think it is?
Right there.
Nope. That's not it. That's for that. That's
That's
what
toasted oats.
Toasted oats.
Alright.
Lucky Charms. What you got?
$11.95.
Watch, here we go, y'all. Watch, here we go.
11.
Or Fruit Loops for $9.70.
The Lucky Charms was $8.51.
Sheesh.
Lucky Charms was $9.72.
Ain't that something?
Okay.
Fruit poison.
Do you pay for a gallon of milk?
Oh,
How much for a gallon of milk? Almost $4.
So now it's just
Five.
Two.
Somebody said 10. Here we go. Let's see what and the winning price is
$10 here.
$10.
$16.82.
Oh, it's that
No.
$10
How much do you pay for a gallon of milk? They pay $10 here. $16.82.
$16.
For a gallon of gas. $9.59 for a gallon of water. $2.89.
Where is this at?
In Alaska.
1.3 pounds of ground beef. $9.51. The avocados are $5 each. And for this particular tomato, just a little under $4. $2.99 a pound for bananas. And for the grand finale of our grocery store.
Uh-oh, here's the grand finale. The grand finale. Y'all ready for the
Is
grand
that
finale?
dollar worth the same as our dollar?
Yeah. All right, here we go. This is the grand finale. A half a watermelon. Come on, y'all. What you?
$25.
You said what?
$25.
She said $25.
Half a watermelon.
Half a watermelon.
Man.
19.
$19. All right. Come on, so you got one for us. What you got?
30.
You said, uh-oh, he said, he went over at the 30. Here we go. So see who's right. The price is right is for
Half of a watermelon for $37.
Oh, that's why no black people up there. Hey, but I know a young guy. He's a police officer out of West Philly, and he was thinking about working for Alaska State Troopers. So he put in the application, and they flew out here to talk to him, and they started at $90,000.
Wow.
And I see why it's so high. He knows how to fly a plane. So they want guys that know that can fly, because it's such a remote area. Sometimes you have to get around, but I see why the salary starts at $90,000. Yeah, exactly.
But now, why are the prices so high? What do you think the reason is that the prices are so high? They can't really grow.
Everything's getting shipped. Yeah, everything's getting shipped in.
Right, everything has to get shipped in.
6 months and freezing cold.
Right, and it's opportunity. They got it.
So I wanted y'all to see this for a reason, because you gotta start thinking about some stuff. All right, here we go. So just remember that. Remember this, okay? All right, here we go. Let's move to our next one. All right. The next one.
Tonight's Fact or Fiction is brought to you.
There was a thing going out on Facebook talking about how the Simpsons predicted the coronavirus, right? And it was going all over, right? So when I saw it, I said, oh, this looks kind of a little suspicious here, right? Here we go. And this is why it's so important to look at stuff, because you don't know,
Children are watching too.
not just what your children are watching, if somebody's manipulating your perception, okay? Controlling your reality, giving you a false reality. Here we go, watch this.
America's finest carpet.
In tonight's Fact or Fiction, we are looking into yet another claim about the Simpsons predicting a big news event. The story this time...
Now, what they gave you was, they put the coronavirus in, right? They said, oh, the Simpsons predicted the coronavirus, all right? Here we go.
TV show eerily predicted the outbreak of the coronavirus.